So we know over the last week or so, there was an outage for PlayStation Network, and then there was an extended outage for Xbox with their online services, the storefront, sign ins, even accessing digital games, but also accessing your physical games. And that threw everyone through a loop when that wouldn't work because it didn't really make a lot of sense considering you have the disc in front of you and you pop it into the system. Well, Microsoft has had some interesting ideas, we'll say, for this generation early on, especially. And it's kind of led to the entire physical games kind of market being exposed, at least for modern day physical games. And they're not all made equal, which I'll talk about here, but we're going to go over that here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Okay, so this is over on The Verge, as they were able to get comment from Xbox CTO Scott Van of Light, Scott. Got it from Scott, the CTO there. I addressed issues concerning Xbox discs not launching games during Xbox Live's most recent outage, and they plan to make sure this doesn't happen again. So, I had looked at it myself when the outage was going on, and it was spotty in general, depending, I guess, when you signed in or even at really where you were in, I guess, in the world, trying to access the Xbox services. Because at one point, like no games worked, and that included physical. And then a little later on, physical games worked, but digital games didn't. And I went through that and noticed it myself. So I had digital games on my Xbox system, some purchased, some through Game Pass. Neither of those would launch correctly. I think the only one that did was Forza Horizon 6. And I tried 10 or 11 games, like many digital games, and one of them worked. But then I started dropping in some physical games, and even a couple of them I just did the full install, like from scratch, just to make sure, and they did launch like without any issues. They even pulled an update down to make sure, of like, I think one was like 2 GB or something for the update. But otherwise, like Devil May Cry 5, in like it installed 30 GB from the disc itself. However, Microsoft, again, did some interesting stuff, we'll say, this generation to start. If you remember Xbox Smart Delivery, I remember MVG made a video exploring this a bit, to where he found that many of the games you'd buy with Smart Delivery didn't actually have the game on the disc. Go figure. You'd pop the game in, and what it would do from there is decide what version of the game you needed, depending on the system you were accessing. So, like an Xbox One version of a game may be on the disc, but you popped it into your Xbox Series X, and now it needs kind of a different version of the game. So it doesn't use much on the disc other than the digital entitlement, and it pulls the rest of the files there. I mean, you also had like an Xbox One X, I guess the One S, because I think the One S had HDR, but the Xbox One didn't. And like there are differences between these SKUs, and that was kind of the idea of smart delivery then, and even now, maybe going into Helix. A lot of questions still around how exactly that's going to play out. But the point is, there seems to be some kind of entitlement or an entitlement check, even for Xbox discs, physical media, which, man, if that just doesn't define modern gaming now, I don't know what else would. All right, so during the outage here that was happening. Now, Scott did put out, the CTO at Xbox, did put out an entire statement about this and kind of explain what happened. There seemed to be some kind of disruption based on entitlement checks, but it was within Microsoft, but outside of Xbox. He had to kind of double back and try to explain exactly what he was saying. But he did eventually say, we're looking into reports that some players were unable to access games using discs as expected during the service interruption. Disc-based entitlement checks should not prevent players from accessing their games, and this is by design. So he mentions that Xbox's tech engineers discovered that there was an issue that prevented certain Xbox consoles from correctly using saved entitlements during the outage. Offline mode is also designed to rely on those saved entitlements. So it has the entitlement then stored on your local machine that you would have as like your main system. Like you can do like secondary consoles and stuff, but no, that's the idea. Offline mode, that is your system with all the entitlements loaded locally for discs as well as digital games. This is the conversation I'm noticing that I don't think these companies are going to like to have if we are indeed about to go into just an entirely digital setup for gaming. I don't know if they want to really talk about the idea of, oh, these digital products that you sell, you're not actually selling them. You're just kind of renting access. So we can't use the term buy anymore because if you do, then you have to come up with, DRM free methods of ownership. So if you go on GOG as an example and you buy a game there, you can download the game completely, uninstall GOG, and still access the game. You can take those files, put it on a disk. You can put it on a USB flash drive, move over to another system and load it up. You can install it just like if you bought the game from a store. Like you could have multiple DVDs, doesn't matter. In fact, GOG, if you have the offline files, it'll even split it into 4 GB chunks so that you can burn each and every one, if you would like to DVDs. Or if you're someone who has a Blu-ray writer and then reader, you can of course go that route and just use like 1 or 2 Blu-rays. Some of these games are pretty big, so it's like, what are you gonna do? But even for older titles on GOG, it's pretty cool because if it's small enough to fit on a CD, you can do that, and you can make cover art. There's a whole thing about it online right now. But that's what I would like to see for Sony and Microsoft if they are indeed moving on from physical media, because at that point you have to mimic the ownership, will say, of physical media. I say ownership that way because if you buy, I mentioned Forza Horizon 6, all right? If I buy a copy, Forza Horizon 6, we'll say even digitally, I know I don't own the Forza franchise. Like that seems obvious. I feel like sometimes people get in semantics and try to be smart about it and are even annoying online. But no, you are buying access to the game, sure, but also you are buying a copy of that game. And what that means is you should be able to, yes, download the files onto your system. And you know what? If I don't like the game after a few hours, I should be able to sell it to somebody, like just outright, whether there's a digital marketplace that Sony or Microsoft like support, or if I want, I can take those files, put it on a flash drive. It has like a unique ID attached to it. So you can't basically counterfeit the game or anything. I understand that. There's gonna be fears around piracy and stuff, sure. But you'd be able to take it and then sell it to somebody. Like put it on their system, they give you money, whatever it is, and then that's it. It's just like taking a disc and selling it to someone. That seems pretty straightforward there, because right now, the way that this is all accelerating, where post January 2028, there's really not going to be a plan for any of this. I think it's going to be a position where there'll be pressure put on Sony and Microsoft from regulators, from governments. And unfortunately, the process for that takes forever. So we may end up 3/4 of the way through the PS6 or the Xbox Helix generation before we start to have regulations or at least a concrete plan put together, because trust me, the ESA especially, they're going to have Sony and Microsoft's backs on this whole thing. They're not going to go quietly with this because there is so much control that is given up to the platform holders when you remove a form of ownership like physical games and media, that actually provides. So because of that, and with what they're able to do for pricing and funneling people into certain stores, whether it's Xbox or PlayStation, they will make it a very long and drawn out process, I'm sure, and it will take quite some time. And my real concern here is that there is never a resolution for it, because they string it out for so long. They go to the next phase, which is them just doing cloud streaming, and they don't have to send you files. So what ownership? It's like you're accessing our servers, and you know what? We will tell you it's access. It's play now. That would be my concern, is that we actually end up moving off of just transferring files at all, because none of it's local anymore. There's no more native gaming for new titles. And trust me, based on what I saw from companies like Ubisoft when they were all about Stadia and stuff, I kind of feel like they want that to be the next step, and they want it to happen soon. But this is the biggest thing that I understand people are really, really trying to push back on these companies getting rid of physical media. And I understand, because there's no plan anyway. Like, I understand people who really like physical media. You like getting the disc, you like having the box art that you can put up on your shelf. That is fun. It's nice from that collector standpoint. And for many of us who are a bit older, it's kind of nostalgic still, even though you're like, okay, I'm not playing directly off this disc. It's kind of an install disc, but at least there is a gold copy of the game there that I can install if, let's say your account gets hacked or whatever happens there. I can at least reinstall these games and keep playing. It's not tied to an account that has all of my access or my or my entitlements attached to it. And that there's so many things they need to figure out, and they're just not ready yet. And I don't think they're all of a sudden going to be ready at the beginning of 2028 when they move off of disc-based media. The way that Microsoft has this planned out, as they are going to do their disc to digital program that they're testing, that also plays into this, where they have digital entitlements attached to physical game discs. I mean, on those platforms, like how valuable will those types of games that have digital entitlements attached to them really be, as opposed to, hey, if you buy a game, we'll just say on the PS4, where it was pretty clear Sony did not have any of this stuff figured out then, because I don't think they're going to do disc to digital, but the game files were on the disc. You had to install it, but it was there. Or if you buy we'll even say a Switch 2 game, and it's from Nintendo, and the game is on the cartridge. Splatoon Raiders comes out. You pop it in, it's all there, and it starts right away. There's no install. So that's a bit of a difference there, but man, if that's really how Microsoft's physical games are now, as they're being portrayed here, they basically already are all digital, and they might want to start working out how you can get copies of your game DRM free so you can store offline just in case Xbox Live goes down again. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.